As the far-reaching impact of a changing climate becomes increasingly clear, a crisis is unfolding in California. Beneath the waters of the Pacific Ocean, kelp forests have long been home to a vibrant ecosystem. But warming oceans and other environmental factors have depleted kelp in some areas of the state by as much as 95%.
The California coast, where the western edge of North America meets the Pacific Ocean. A region of rugged beauty, rich biodiversity, and, just off the shore, underwater forests. Kelp, a type of algae, has long grown abundantly here. It attaches to the seafloor, providing food and shelter to thousands of species, pulling carbon from the atmosphere, and reducing ocean acidity.
So it's creating habitat for birds, for marine mammals like harbor seals, which we have just out on the rocks here, all sorts of invertebrates, fish, of course.
But warmer ocean temperatures and other environmental changes started a series of events that have devastated California's kelp in the last few years. Up and down large parts of the coastline, what were once dense forests of this giant seaweed have been depleted by as much as 95%.
Just in the last 5 years, it's been very alarming to see kelp, especially along this coast, just disappear. We haven't seen that before.
As California continues to grapple with climate change, its government and scientific community are mobilizing to try and figure out how to save its kelp.
We're here in a patch of the Pacific Ocean, which is still home to a thriving kelp forest. This research team has come out today to dive down and collect kelp sporophyll to take back to their lab.
Sporophyll is tissue at the bottom of the kelp that is key to its reproductive process. Scientists at the University of California, Irvine are studying the kelp and growing it in a controlled environment to understand why some are still thriving.
One of the goals for us is to take different populations of kelp all along the coast, see which ones are the hardiest to these hot temperatures, and then also try to heat them up to see if they can tolerate it in the lab, and then when we place them out back into their habitat, that they are more likely to survive.
This is male and this is female.
It's a process Professor Lamb describes as trying to future-proof the kelp to prepare it for a warmer climate. Soon they'll put the best strains back in the ocean to see what happens and determine if they could potentially become climate resilient.
May I? Thank you, sir.
About 1,000 kilometers to the north, in the town of Fort Bragg, another project is underway. This one is centered on a species that feeds on kelp, purple sea urchins. These voracious creatures have become a huge threat to the kelp. Scientists suspect the climate crisis played a role in the mysterious die-off of one of their predators, the sunflower star, and that may have swelled the sea urchin population.
Oh, I'm not doing this very nice. Yep, completely empty.
Now starved of the drift kelp that used to come their way, and with a unique ability to stay alive with barely any food, they immediately devour any kelp that tries to regrow.
Urchins kind of got left unchecked and mowed down the forest, kind of like deforestation. They pretty much clear-cutted the kelp forest.
What used to be kelp forests here have become what's known as urchin barrens. Here we see a kelp has had its root-like system destroyed by the urchins. To try and restore the kelp, California is funding efforts to remove the urchins from designated zones.
So it's a state-funded project to see if we can reduce purple urchin numbers down below a certain threshold, and that threshold is 2 per meter squared. So you take a meter and you count the urchin in there, and right now we're about anywhere from 5 to 15 per meter squared, and we want to reduce that to 2 per meter squared.
So I built this one from 91 to 94.
The state has enlisted local commercial divers like JON HOLCOMB and pays them to remove the urchins. That's a boon for divers who depend on harvesting shellfish for their income. They have suffered from the loss of the kelp forests that used to support large shellfish populations.
Some areas change year to year. It varies. So when the kelp didn't show up in 2015, nobody was really concerned. Over time, though, you begin to wonder what's going on. How come there's no kelp? And then when you went in and saw the urchins everywhere and no chance for kelp, anything that was still alive was swarmed and being chewed on.
For now, urchin management on a large scale has little financial incentive. Purple urchins are smaller and have less reliable roe than red urchins, which produce the uni at sushi restaurants. But at this lab, a company called Urchinomics is hoping to change that.
And what we're trying to do is take this low-value pest and transform it into a high-value product.
They have developed a proprietary food source and systems they say can quickly turn even malnourished urchins into something that might appear at a high-end restaurant. If the market is there, the hope is to scale up with purple urchin fisheries up and down the coast. So, what do purple urchins taste like anyway?
So here we go, eating a purple urchin. Let's see how this thing tastes. Wow, wow, that's good.
Kind of shocking,
That's
right?
really good, yeah.
But whether any of these efforts will be enough to save the kelp is still a big unknown. Kelp forests, which depend on cool waters and exist along about a quarter of the world's coastlines, aren't just disappearing in California.
It's beautiful.
The world's oceans are gradually growing warmer.
Come on in here.
And that means these rich ecosystems are being wiped out across the globe.
We're learning so much from Australia, Canada, all these other places, Norway, that are dealing with these issues and how they're either being successful or not successful in turning that around. So I think there's absolutely a role for the world community to play in addressing kelp as a world issue, as an ocean-wide issue.
And as the efforts to save California's kelp show, the battle against the effects of climate change is increasingly being fought locally, on the ground, and beneath the sea.